Well, I agree with you, Congressman, and I've had radiologists on the show. We've got the New York Times, top scientists, federal bodies, the International Atomic Energy Agency have said that these things have 50 times what the TSA claimed a year ago. They've been lying, and if you look at the images TSA has released, to give you an idea, you can see the hands, and you can see the bones in the hands, and that's exactly what radiologists have told me on and off air, is that they've looked at the calibrations. It's about like a dental skull X-ray. It's not approaching a chest X-ray, but it's close, and it's the repeated exposure, and they've got all these top scientists on record saying bare minimum skin cancers, and that it'll exacerbate people that are already prone to skin cancers. What about the TSA workers who are around it all day? They're not hiding behind any lead shielding. But, Congressman, what about this issue? Ron Paul, we had him on yesterday, and you said you heard it.
Right.
But you know, I said, so you've had enhanced pat-down? He said, yes. I said, they've touched your crotch. He said, yes, it's disgusting. That's on the Drudge Report today, the video and audio of that. But now the TSA told ABC News maybe that goes too far. Hand in the pants. I mean, this is insane. And now people are stripping down into their underwear as a protest. The TSA is still rubbing their skin, rubbing their kneecaps where they have metal in them to make sure it's really metal. I mean, this is like the sacrificing our liberty on the altar of big government, Congressman. But my issue is that now it's discriminatory because Boehner, it's video of it on the news. He gets to go around the checkpoint. A lot of other Congress people, they're not releasing the full list, but it's in the AP. The White House says they won't release who it is. But now if you're a bigwig, you get a pass, but the citizens don't. Here's the headline: TSA, some government officials to skip airport security. A, do you get to bypass it? And B, what's your view of this?
Well, no, I don't get to bypass it, and I saw that in the paper myself. I hadn't even heard that part until I saw that this morning on the news, and I assume that they're giving a pass to the top cabinet officials and the top administration officials and the leaders of the House and Senate. The top 5 in the House and the top 4 in the Senate. I assume that that's what it is. But nobody, if we're going to have it, nobody at the top level should be given a pass. But there's other concerns that go along with that. For instance, I understand that already people who say they don't want to go through the scanning, that some TSA people are resentful about having to do that, and so they're being almost rude or irritable or hateful in doing these.
No, they're rough. They're rough. They squeeze hard. That's confirmed.
Right, and then I have this concern also that the plans are right now to purchase 1,800 of these scanners by various departments and agencies by the year 2014. And what I can see coming is that they'll end up buying several thousand of these things and wanting to put them in all the federal buildings for when you go in, any federal building, and all these department agencies, they all want to get all the latest gizmos and so forth. But there is one good thing that may come out of this, hopefully, and it would be that number one, that more people would begin to realize that just because the word security is mentioned doesn't mean that it's necessary or that it's good or that it's not excessive or intrusive, and more people will begin to question these things, and then also maybe, hopefully, some of these bureaucracies will be a little bit slower to purchase a great many of these machines. But I just think it's we've got this big elitist, out of control federal government now, and it's totally opposite from what our founding fathers thought the way things should be. They thought that we should solve most of our problems through the private free enterprise system, and then go to government only for a few things, and first to the local governments and then to the state governments, and have the federal government was meant to be only a government of last resort with very few and very limited powers. But what we've done in the last few years is turn the federal government into a government of first resort that we run to for almost everything, and it's just not working.
Absolutely. Representative John Duncan is our guest. Amazing. And he's there from the Knoxville area with his district in Tennessee. You can go to the House site and, of course, visit his site and read his writings and ideas. Are there any other websites, Congressman, that people can visit?
Well, no, they can visit my website, but and I speak out on these things all the time, and like I said, I certainly admire and respect the work that you're doing too, because it's going to take it's going to be very difficult to turn this monster around, but we sure need to do so. When you're talking about us facing a national debt of over $14 trillion, which is a mind-boggling figure, but what it means is it's an incomprehensible figure, but it means that it's not going to be long at all before we're not going to be able to pay all of our Social Security and veterans pensions and things we promised our own people.
Absolutely. Sir, we're almost out of time, and will you promise to come back in the next few months?
Yes, I'll be glad to. I'm honored to be on here with you, and I'll keep listening to you every chance I have.
Well, we've got about 5 minutes left with you, Congressman. I want to finish up on the eve of Thanksgiving. We appreciate you joining us and your great record of promoting liberty in the House of Representatives. Talking about the New World Order. You know, Ron Paul, myself, you and others have been demonized over the years for being informed, reading UN documents, knowing about the CFR. Now, it's world government, new global taxes, carbon taxes to be paid to this SDR. We see the private central banks imploding countries. I do see a really big awakening. What's your message to the American people about this global government? And what's your view on where we're going? I mean, I believe we're starting to turn the corner and that real issues are starting to get on the table.
Well, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because, I mean, now we're seeing the bailout that's having to be put together for Ireland. And earlier, a few months ago, we had to do one for Greece. And the American taxpayers are paying a lot of this bailout and don't even realize it, because big portions of these bailouts are being paid through the International Monetary Fund.
Yeah, sometimes we pay more than half, as you know.
We shouldn't even be in the first place. But we see Greece and Ireland and they on NPR. I listen even to NPR, and this morning they were interviewing a couple of people from Portugal because they think they're next. Spain is next. We look around we see what's happening in California, and you can see what's coming. It doesn't take a genius to see the problems that we're headed into.
We've got to start saying no to these bankers.
That's right, and our children and grandchildren are going to face problems that so severe that we can't even imagine if we don't turn this thing around. And you talk about the New World Order. I remember when they found out that I was leaning against the war in Iraq. They had Condoleezza Rice and George Tenet, the head of the CIA, and John McLaughlin, his deputy director. They had me and 5 others down to a little secure room at the White House. And I told them at that time, I said, there was a front page story in the Washington Post. Lawrence Lindsay, the president's chief economics advisor, had said that day that a war with Iraq would cost $100 to $200 billion, and they fired him because of it. And I asked Condoleezza Rice about that, and she said, "Oh no, it wouldn't cost more than $50 or $60 billion, and we'd get some of that back from our allies." And how wrong she was about that. But I asked them that day. I said, if you can get past the traditional conservative position of being against massive foreign aid, and the traditional conservative position of being against huge deficit spending, and against the traditional conservative position of being the biggest critics of the UN, and we were going to war to enforce UN resolutions, I said, if you get past all those traditional conservative positions, is there any evidence of any imminent threat? And they didn't have any. And what I'm trying to get across to you is that these things have been totally opposite or totally against all traditional conservative positions. And yet we've had too many Republicans in the Congress, good friends of mine, who've been supporting some of this stuff. But hopefully, with the Tea Party and the opposition that's popped up here in these last few months, hopefully, we've got more people realizing that we've got to do differently than we did when we had control during that 12 years.
Congressman, I know you've got to go. We've got a 1-minute break. Let me just say bye to you during the break, or see if we can come back and just have you briefly finish your thought.